So for any content creator on the planet to survive, we eventually have to resort to this thing called making a tier list. And I am no exception, which today I'm going to be making a tier list for you, which is going to be about US decks in Broken Arrow. My name is Corin, and I hope you have fun watching it. Alright, to get into the video, the first thing that might come to mind is, Corin, why is the first tier not even S? And it has something to do with how I wanted to make this video, and that's for one or two reasons. The main reason is because a lot of the decks in the game are actually very situational. Like they could be good in the center of the map, they could be good in the flanks of the map, and sometimes they're almost irrelevant to a point where you only bring them if you have like someone else to back you up for what you're doing. So I'll be making two tier lists actually. The first tier list is going to be based on where they perform and how I think they will perform. So for example, I'm going to have a list of like decks for the mirror. Actually, honestly, I don't know what to put in this one, but I'll have certain like a line of specializations of decks in the center of the map, and then I'll list them one by the other, and then I'll tell you like which one's better than the other one. So like they'll be listed in order for like for their certain categories, and then after that I'm gonna reset the entire thing, and then I'll like do it the more conventional way, like S, A, B, C, D, just depending on their pure strength and how easy it is to master a certain deck. So yeah, let's jump right into it. The first deck is actually going to be armored. What is this? Marine armored. This is the most like the oldest deck actually. The first deck that actually got into the game. It has the most tanks that the US can ever offer. A very big variety of that, and also along with a versatile helicopter and air tab, so the deck doesn't feel too lonely when it comes to CAS, that kind of stuff. It also has a really impressive support tab, including both the Assault Breacher and the Cat Fae. And I'm not even mentioning the MLRS and also the gun artillery yet. And I think this deck, let me just pop this up real quick. Okay, there we go. This deck is not really that popular for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's that this deck is obviously the IVs that that the Armor Brigade provides are very good. The only thing is it doesn't really give you a lot of options to put inside of these the infantry tab. For example, the Marine squad is actually 13 man, so you cannot put them inside an AMPV or a Bradley. Obviously, you could tell your AMPV to shoot a Marine and shoot him dead on the spot and then load them into the truck. That could work, but that's also kind of kicking yourself. Is that how the idiom works? Like, you know, dropping a stone in your own feet or something like that? But anyways, the thing about this deck is that the IVs themselves can't really load the useful infantry. I'm not saying that mech engineers or mech riflemen are like useless, but they're definitely not as strong as the Marine counterparts. And if you want to load the Marine infantry, then they usually have to go in rather weaker IV. So obviously you could mix both of them up and put them on the front line, let the armored IVs tank, and then let the Marine infantry go in. But you're gonna have to spend extra points just to keep both types of infantry on the front line. And not to say that you also have to try to maintain a really good like fire support for your teammates, and also tanks. So this is a very expensive deck to put on the ground. If you can manage to keep all of your units alive and also like utilize these supplies like this, the support tab like the Assault Breacher, the Cat Fae, this is a really good deck for you to use. So me personally, I would put this probably in somewhere like I do believe this is more of a center deck. Not that easy to learn, but I've met players, for example, like Zulu plays this exceptionally well. You'll hear me glazing this man multiple times because he is that good. But anyways, this is definitely a deck. Honestly, I haven't played this deck enough to put it in A tier, but I'll definitely come back and revisit this deck. The second one we have is Armored Airborne. This is a very popular deck for many different reasons. Don't mind the deck name. This is the deck that I made when the BMD2 spam was really a thing, but I also changed it a little bit. So the thing that's special about this deck is that you have, compared to Armored USMC that is that this deck has a bit more flexibility when it comes to helicopters. They have the Fire and Forgetting ATGMs, which is something that's definitely an upgrade compared to the Super Cobras and Vipers. The Apache airframe is also much more tankier itself. The airborne, and then we also have the infantry squads, which the thing that it does better is that the airborne, like NGSW, this is a really good squad at standoff range. You also have rather or relatively cheaper ATGM teams like the weapons squad, the TOW 2A or B if you prefer. The Stinger teams are also existing, which is something that USMC does not offer at all. You have basically they ripple fire themselves, and overall you could say that this is one of the most beginner friendly decks. And however, when it comes to downsides of this thing, the issue of this deck is basically revolving around two things. I'm not saying like it's terrible, obviously. Like when I say downside, it's just something that I observed that might eventually cuck you in some time, you know, in the future. But anyways, the first thing is that although the infantry, you could technically put the infantry in very forward positions with like helicopters or like the ISVs. They're really fast. If you cannot manage to support them with the armored IVs or like tanks themselves, which are kind of slow themselves, they will eventually get overran. The infantry themselves will get overran, and then all of a sudden you're left with the vehicles that don't really have infantry to support them. So you kind of have to find that balance between where to put your infantry before your vehicles arrive, so that they can just hang out there. And it's okay if they don't do anything, but the thing is they should probably stick around until the vehicles arrive. And I'll give you a bit of bonus content here, talk about my deck a little bit. The way that I build this deck is that I kind of use the M113 and pair them with the NGSW because obviously you could put them inside, but the thing is if I roll them in ISVs and push them to the front line, the ISV sometimes dies halfway, and then these guys are just stuck out in the open and gonna receive a lot of vehicle fire. So the M113 is obviously a good option when it comes to like dropping infantry in hot zones. You still do have other options. You could put them in AMPVs, you know, you could just spam AMPVs. This is obviously an option. You could like drop all of these and then just run AMPVs full out, but the infantry tab in Armored Airborne is relatively small. It's the same as the Stryker Airborne when it before they changed the values, so that's also a thing. But you could make up for it with having Cav Scouts. You know, this is a 3-man team, so if you stack 2 of them together and then put them in an ISV, because both of them, I mean, this is not that stealthy, but you could like just roll these around and use this as a like double firing javelin team when you do have the weapon squads, but that's up to you. Yeah, I think that should be it for this deck. If you ask me, Corn, why does your X-Eagle cost this much? It's just because I run the JASMs, but the air tab is really flexible. It's up to you, since you could, like, this is the thing, right? You already do have Brutuses that offer you laser guided artillery, so I mean, these are in the same deck technically, so you could use this as a bomber. The cruise missiles are also great. They just kind of get intercepted sometimes, while the Brutus themselves, they don't really kill the enemy. They kind of just force them off unless your opponent is completely unaware of this thing's existence. And then also you have the GMLRS, which is helpful. Helpful as in using cluster artillery to clear out tree lines, this and that. And but you could also bring more, you know? You could bring more since the support tab is quite spacious. As in where I would put this deck in the tier list, I would probably say, honestly, this is a very universal deck. So I would put this up here. This is a universal deck, but probably not that far up because it does have its weaknesses, and it is not the most. It's basically the deck where the infantry are the weakest, and you really need the vehicles and the helicopters to make up for it, which sometimes isn't that helpful. Anyways, let's move to the next deck. That should be the Stryker SF, not Stryker SF, Stryker Airborne. This deck used to be the deck that I played the most when the game first came out. I mainly played it for the Bookers and the Thunderbolts. This combination was rather deadly, but now I've kind of gotten into a place where people kind of respond to Bookers with like they get very smart with how to deal with Bookers, so it's not that good for me anymore. But there also are other vehicles that are really fun from the Strikers. The MGS is actually really effective at dealing with anything but a tank. Also, it kind of sucks at CQC, but that's alright. You also have a really decent support tab. The support tab used to be even bigger because they moved 250 points to the infantry tab, which you could in return bring more strikers yourself. Thing about this deck, I think, okay, so compared to the armored airborne deck, this deck has a bit more flexibility when it comes to like IMVs. When I say flexibility, I mean like they run faster basically. They're not as tanky, which is a given fact, but they can catch up with the infantry that you deploy, and also it's not like the support tab is really that far behind, because you could still bring cluster HIMARS when the GMLRS also has its cluster things. The Pack 3 and the Pack 3 MSC only have a difference when it comes to range, and then the support and like the logistics, you have like 2 different trucks that you could pick, which is up to you. Helicopter tab is the same, while the air tab, the only difference I think that might like the only 2 planes that would make a difference if you really like the F-16s, and actually, yeah, alright, my English is messed up right now, but basically you get the CJs, which is a dedicated seed plane, whereas normally airborne decks that only have like Sex Eagles, which it gets really expensive if you put 4 harms on it. So the CJ definitely complements, is a cheaper alternative to the Sex Eagle. And then you can also run in with the Strike Eagle, which if you add these two planes or jets prices together, it's actually almost the same as a Sex Eagle. So that's also a nice thing. The only thing that this deck lacks a little bit is, same with the previous deck, is that it doesn't have 9-kilometer or ranged ATGMs. Oops, sorry, it popped out right there. And that the infantry themselves, the playstyle of this deck is really kind of focused around whether you can stay at a certain distance, like engage your opponent from a certain distance rather than him running units down into you. Because if you choose to run NGSW Airborne, then you basically lose all the infantry that are equipped with AT4s. I'm not saying troopers don't have AT4s, but they only have 3, and scouts also only have 3, which is definitely not enough when your opponent decides to push everything into your face and blast you. But then if you run normal airborne, then now all of a sudden you kind of lose a bit of both AT and anti-infantry capabilities at a short, at a standoff distance, which kind of also does hurt sometimes, but you could make up with it with vehicles, and that would be up to you. The last thing is whether you should bring APS on the Thunderbolt. In my personal opinion is just run armor, because if you deal with tanks, then you can tank an extra shot. And then normally I would just smoke up when I see an ATGM, but if you can't react in time, it's okay. Just bring APS. or just have Stryker MGS lead the way in the front and let the Thunderbolt shoot in the back. That's also up to you. So if you ask me where I would put this deck, I would definitely leave it. Honestly, is there really a deck that should fit in this category? I don't know, but I'll definitely put this near here. These two decks are quite similar when it comes to like their role, except you could put this on the flank. All right, let's put this on the flank since it's not that great in the center. Next deck is going to be the infamous Stryker SF. This is a really this deck has been around. I mean, I've been playing this deck for a very long time, so I actually have two variants. This is good for both. You know what? I'm just gonna put this in flank deck already. This is probably the best flank deck out there, with one exception, but we'll talk about that later. It's good for multiple reasons. Let's start with the one that is for mirror matches. Yes, I have both. I have one deck for mirror, one deck for against RU. The thing about this deck when you play, should we start with mirror? Or should we start with Russia first? Okay, the deck for Russia. The deck for Russia is against Russia. You generally want to run the RC in CQC because they have their armor is definitely stronger. They also have like more BMPs and like Bradley levels of like IVs with Bradley levels of protection. So having stronger AT which you can fire in a burst is really good. So, and that's what the RCs provide. So I think CQC is definitely better. And this also forces your opponent to run engineer type of infantry, which you also have to bring your own in return, but if they bring more CQC infantry, then that also means that they don't really have that much AT, so that's a really good thing for you. Everything here is pretty much the same thing. You have the Stryker RV, which can run around on flanks, beat almost anything except for the I forgot what it's called again. It's the recon vehicle, BRM-3K 57mm. If it does manage to get the jump on the Stryker RV, then you are kind of dead. So yeah, that's one thing to keep your eyes open for. Oops, wrong one. Wait, do I have the right tab open? Okay, I do. And then for the infantry tab, it's still very flexible. You have troopers that can kind of act as a weapon squad, you know, like you stack two in the same building and they can take a lot of enemy fire and still fight back until artillery blows up the supplies nearby and all of a sudden you have to retreat. So it's also okay to just have javelin squads, which they actually have way more range and more ammo. And then in the meantime, like the infantry tab is really big for this one. You can obviously bring like more troopers for more dragoons, which can carry rangers, combat engineers. Sometimes just bring Maws because even though the dragoon is not going to be completely full, having the Maws provide enough firepower to deal with enemy tanks as well. So this is obviously they die fairly quickly, so it's best that so having them in a dragoon is a pretty nice thing. The dragoons can roll in, drop the Maws, and then have them shoot a couple shots, and then when your opponent's tank smokes up, just pack them back in the dragoon and let them run away. If you do have the APM, if you don't, then just hope your opponent also doesn't have the APM to smoke up in time then. But yeah, like the weaknesses about this deck, actually I've never even mentioned the helicopters and the air tabs, but the air tab is really flexible in the sense where you can have like the 375 Raptor against this is really good against Russia because if you open with this plane, you will always be able to outspot your opponent. So you don't really need 6 AMRAMs, but that's totally fine. The F-35A's 355 build is also the best against Russia. This is just a plane I bring for the cheap, for being a cheapskate, but also you still have the Viper and also the If you guys are like struggle with like enemy armor spam, then having the Fighting Falcon with Mavericks is definitely an option. Also, same goes for the harms if your opponents genuinely don't react in time. So this is Strikers are a really good deck when it comes to dealing with new players and even with old like more experienced players. This is definitely the deck that you should go for. On flanks, the Nighthawk is also good, but we don't really need to mention it for now. The helicopter tab. This is like against Russia, you really want to utilize killer eggs, since they are. How should I put it? Because if you have 2 killer eggs, they always cost less than an enemy helicopter, but they can always kill it most of the time, unless you're really unlucky, and then you'll just have some support helicopters, and then the Comanche, which is really good. Against Russia, you could technically drop every single MGS trophy, except when you look at the stats of the MGS, it can actually 2-tap every single like the K-17 Boomerang and the B-10, 11, or 15 Kurganets. These are the IVs that Russia has that also have APS, so they can 2-tap them, which is really which also makes these really threatening IVs kind of actually it's kind of like these IVs Achilles heel, you know, like these things are kind of the counter to it. But then Russia also has armor spam, so you could just you can also counter like the IVs with Bookers and then let the ATGMs with Top Attack deal with the enemy tanks. And so that also works for you. But regardless, on the flank, since you also will fight enemy armor sometimes, so it's best to have like different types of units, you know, like helicopters, planes, and ATGMs, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, overall the best deck for flanks. And then the next one is going to be Marine SF. Oh wait, I never even talked about the mirror deck. Dang it. Oh, okay, fine, I'll talk about this deck then. The only difference about this this deck and the last one is that it has a bit more focus on fighting in standoff ranges. The reason for that is like basically the only main difference is that the RSE is now standoff, because a lot of the things that US has is a bit like it's not as tanky. Like when it comes to armor, it's not as tanky as it is compared to Russia. And then if you have more range than your opponent, then you kind of just win engagements straight out. So this is also the main difference. I think RSE, I'd run them on standoff, and then pretty much everything's the same. Strikers are still MGSs are they as good as they are in? Okay, maybe they aren't as good as they are in mirrors, but still I run them. I like them. All right, so that should be it. And the next deck would be, what is this? Marine SF. Okay, so God, this is gonna take a really long time. This deck, I think it's the best for central, like center fighting, but I do think it has. Honestly, I really don't play this deck enough, so I don't know if I can say that they're good on, they're viable on flanks. But this is totally up to you. If anything, this is actually like these two decks, like Marine Armored and Marine SF, are like kind of they're kind of interlocking, and like they're good in mirrors. They're also good in center. So if there was like a space between these two, I could put them in. I would put them together, but I guess I'll put this in mirror. The reason I put this in mirror is because, okay, well this is kind of fucked up, but anyways, because I now have 2 different decks for this. All right, let's just use the center one for an example then. Let me okay, it does look a bit weird, because if you look at it, you'll realize, okay, Corn, where the fuck is your Lav AD, right? Where the fuck is your Lav AD? Oh, sorry. Where the fuck is your Lav AD? Are you trolling? No. Okay, maybe I am, but The thing is usually in the center of the map. If your opponent decides to use helicopters, normally manpads and are capable of jump scaring your opponent's helicopters and piss them off. And then second of all, this support tab of like the USMC is really not great. Like it's fairly lacking, and in the center of the map you really want to use cat face to help you clear out enemy like positions. And then the pack 2 is just here to snipe planes in case they start coming in, having them on the cheaper variant so you have enough points in this deck, and then some logistics. Also the mortar I think is really important, but if you don't like to use the mortar, then drop it. I think this deck is really good when it comes to like having... Okay, well I'll talk about it later, but basically the tanks against like in the center, or maybe against Russia, having a trophy tank it's still really expensive. I don't like using trophy tanks, but if you feel like this makes you feel comfortable and it kills a lot of units for you, then definitely take it. The infantry of this deck is also absolutely spectacular. The one thing that's bad about this deck is that the ISVs are absolute garbage, but if you can utilize smoke to help you push clearings or that kind of stuff, the things that can jump out of your AEVPs or the ACVs are going to be disastrous. For example, if you like, all of the SF infantry squads can be loaded into ACVs. You could put CQC Delta inside an ACV. You can put RC inside an ACV, like 2 squads inside an ACV, and just run them down at 100 speed to your opponents that are currently being smoked up by your mortar. RAWs if your opponent has a tank. And okay, let's not put STT in there, but but you can even put Marines and that kind of stuff, just because they're pretty good all-rounders. And then for Marine Raiders, they are also good for their CQC variant. You could pair them with Maws, so like 6 men and 14 men equals 20. So you can like, they have really good AT and anti-infantry capabilities. Loaded inside an AVP, I would say it is even better than the Marine small combination, which usually if they have to deal with 1 or 2 engineer squads, they're absolutely cooked. But sometimes the Marine Raiders and the Maws can actually fight back in this case, so this is a good combination if you wanted to try it out. The air tab is also kind of scary because you have both the F-35A and the B variant. Okay, both these planes cost 355, but the Harman, the JDAM build is good for pretty much every single type of scenario, while the F-35B can take double JSOWs, which is spectacular at dealing with enemy Bookers, T-80s, and any kind of IV besides Bradleys. Yeah, so they're definitely good. And then one last thing before I talk about the helicopters is that the Humvee GMB, which is the one from the Marines, is actually, I prefer it over the RSOV and the Flyer GMBs because it actually does have a smoke. Yeah, even though it's slower, but yeah, that's the only thing I prefer it over the other ones. So yeah, in the meantime, the only reason I think it's viable for mirrors, even on flanks, is because, okay, well, it's barely viable, I guess. I don't play this deck enough. Is because against like if you're on a flank against another US player, they would usually be playing SF and they would be using killer eggs as their like Shorad until their like maybe Stryker Shorad arrives. So the Super Cobra Sidewinders can actually one-tap a killer egg with one shot. So this is gonna be you will always be trading in your favor if you run to 2 killer eggs with 1 Super Cobra. Yeah, that's one thing that that's just the only thing I wanted to mention, because they don't have ECM and the thing's damage deals more than their total HP. They also have the potential to 2-shot a Comanche if your opponent decides to run any, and you even have the Viper, which if your opponent decides to use a radar, then the sidearm will buy you some time before you retreat, so that's also good. And because it's a mirror, I would expect them to be running Bookers a lot, so the M60 is also good for that, but still, like, The lack of IV might really hurt in the end, so I maybe, like, this is just in theory, okay? Don't take my word for it. So I guess I'll just put this deck on the tier list where it belongs, and that would be center. Okay, there you go. Is it better than the USMC armor one? It kind of depends on the map, honestly, but I'll put these two together. All right, next deck is going to be the Marine Airborne. This is also a deck that has a lack of IVs, but I guess I will stop yapping about the fact that it doesn't have IVs and instead focus a bit more on what this deck actually provides. Compared to SF, this deck is a bit more all-rounded. For example, it has you also get the Airborne and GSW back. You have what is it? Ah, yes, you have the really good Thunderbolt that can basically chop any tank into shreds before it even kills you. And then you also have pretty strong Shorad that can one-tap kill regs, and this has been mirrors though, but and also even Russian helis as well. Some people ask me whether they should upgrade the Slam Ram, and I think it's up to you, but I think it would be funny because I always run the cheapest variant, and it's always funny when I manage to kill an enemy helicopter that costs like a fortune with 100 points only. Next thing, I would only upgrade the armor if you are against Russia, because this thing can, by upgrading it, you can tank one Russian ATGM, whereas as US, that thing will have to be a TOW or a Javelin, which normally against helicopters, they don't have those. So yeah. You also have Cat Phase and Brutuses. These are really good. Same with the Pack 2. And then, yeah, the helicopter tab is pretty solid. You just don't really have the stealth helicopters, but that's okay when it comes to defending. I would say... Oh, where'd I put this deck? Man, this is tough. This is a tough tier list to make. I have no clue where to put this. Dude, I don't have anything in this category. Yeah, definitely can be on the center, can definitely be on the flank, but can it be on the flank? No. Okay. It's not like it can't be put on the flank. Situational? Nah. Okay, maybe always good, but do I put this in always good? Sorry guys, let me think for 5 minutes. Okay, I came up with the conclusion. Not really 5 minutes later, but I think, like, cause I did completely forgot that you do still have two planes that could bring cruise missiles. So technically you could play this deck on a flank and then just stop playing the flank, like just switch to complete, like just defending the cap after you take control of it, and then start bombing the shit out of your opponents or artillerying them, which is definitely viable. So I guess I would put this deck in like a bit more of a versatile. Okay, how about okay, let's not put it in always good. But I definitely rate it behind Armored Airborne because of the IVs. So yeah, on the next deck we have Stryker MC. Okay, this is probably the best deck I would say in the game at the moment. For a couple reasons. Yeah, and that is because we start with the mirror or the non-mirror. This is good for both, by the way. Like, I would say just put this in. Yeah, put this in always okay. All right, so where should we start? The only thing this deck lacks is it doesn't have tube artillery, and I mean you do have Stryker SPHs, but it's not really laser guided, so I guess it's not really that desirable. But this deck is extremely good for both flanks and center, I mean the middle of the map, because it has a Catfay and you also have the HIMARS. This is and also like really tanky infantry, because they have the Marines and the Marine Raiders CQC and also combat engineers. So all these are meat grinding infantry, and then you still have the Shralls, Bookers, and also tanks that deal with enemy armor if you ever need to. This deck also offers you with the Pack 2, so if you do get revenge bombed by your opponent, the Pack 2 will, at least if you're lucky, kill the enemy plane. And then in the meantime, you still have a decent logistics. Like this, supporting your front line is probably way more important than anything when it comes to winning, like taking cap control, that kind of stuff. You could argue that this deck has a lack of ATGM teams, which is true. So on flanks, this is going to be one of the like maybe it kind of sucks on flanks when it comes to ATGMs, but you could make up for it by having like just one Viper shooting at your opponent's IVs, and then let the troopers and Tochues do do a bit of anti-infantry and anti-tank in the center of the map, or like closer to the objective at least. The air tab is also quite nice. You get a bit of everything. You have the F-35s, which could either bring double JSOWs or JDAMs. That would be up to you. You also have the fighting. This is a cheaper plane that I run just to deal with for air openers, but you could still have Hornets. This is up to you, and also the CJs. But because of my limited budget, in this deck I run the Prowler instead of the CJ. And then the Hornet is just for sniping enemy snipers that are in spots that I cannot reach with my Catfey, and the HIMARS is cluster. So yeah, this is what the Hornet is for. I think I've played this deck the most in my entire career. Yeah, this is maxed out, brother. Not that impressive considering, like, I also played Stryker SOF a lot, but I find this deck extremely comfortable. I always play this deck whenever I'm in doubt of either, like, I'm not sure where my teammates are going or whatever. I always pick this deck. It is a fantastic deck, and you should definitely try it if you haven't. So that's why I would put this deck in the always okay tier, but definitely at the strongest, so I'll put them ahead of them. And for the next deck, it's going to be Stryker Armored. So this deck is going to be... How about we look at the deck first? I almost forgot what it's inside, but if I recall anything, it definitely has... Wait, where is it? Okay, it's here. There we go. Okay. So this thing has the most MLRS artillery in the game. I mean, it obviously doesn't have the what's it called again? The Catfey, but it's still good enough because you can have both cluster and HE HIMARS, which is like for demolishing buildings or tree lines. These two are going to be extremely annoying for your opponent to try to hold a certain position and set up a supply line behind it. So having HIMARS is also great. Is always great for it. You also have gun artillery. That is something that the Stryker Marine deck previously could not provide, while still having really good supplies, and also Sherrod and AA. So yeah, definitely the deck with the most points in supply, and you can really help your opponents out if they need anything. The vehicle tab is also spectacular. You can bring different types of tanks while still having a relatively like abundant amount of lightly armored strikers to deal with opponents. Like your opponent's IVs are a bit more maneuverable, and also bookers to back it up. So this deck definitely has an emphasis on the vehicles, and the infantry is probably, if not on the weaker end, comparable to armored airborne, or probably weaker than armored airborne actually. It's like you don't have like weapon squads. You don't have like, the only thing you can rely on is troopers, and they're not really particularly good. The engineers are definitely helpful when it comes to meat grinding. You have both the engineer teams that are 400 meters range, but sometimes you just need that AT, you know, you just need that AT, and if you don't have that AT, then you better pray that your tank's still alive. But you still have cab scouts, but they are expensive. Yeah, like you kind of just have to use the Bradley CMV to deal with most of it, or like tanks, bookers, that kind of stuff, to deal with your opponent's units. So I do think that this deck is definitely not viable on the flanks. It's more of more of a center, or you could even say you could say like this is a mirror. Is this a mirror kind of deck? I guess you could be played in the center, but the lack of infantry. How about we put in situational? Because like if you do have your teammate helping you out with the front line, then you can just spam support back. Okay, so maybe this deck is reserved for support players, but you are willing to play at least some kind of front line, like armored, compared to running Airborne SF. But we will talk about that briefly. Okay, you belong here. All right. So the next deck is gonna be armored SF. This is probably the most popular deck when the game first came out. Where did I put this deck? Honestly, okay, let me show you the deck real quick. There it is. So, you can look at everything inside this deck and think to yourself, okay, Gordon, this deck is fantastic. I have absolutely everything. I have artillery. You can either be tube artillery, you can be MLRS. I can also bring a mortar packs, SHORAD, logistics, everything. The helicopters are pretty decent. They're not the best combination because there's only one spec in it, but like the Comanche and Killer Eggs are good enough to deal with most of my problems. And also I still have F-35s, Nighthawks if I want to cruise missile someone, and also the best fighter in the game, technically. The recon tab is also pretty good, so why don't you put this deck inside of the A tier, or always okay tier? And I'll tell you the reason behind that is because this deck's logistics sucks balls. And if you... because it only runs 60 speed, and if you end up using like the Solar helicopter, like the Chinook helicopter to bring supplies to the front, and then move these guys around to help you resupply. They're really slow, they might get spotted, and then they'll eventually blow up. So, okay, that's a pretty bad argument, but still, the logistics sucks balls for this deck, and I think that although this deck is really pretty good for a lot of scenarios, I do not think it is... If your opponent knows how to exploit you, like by blowing up your supply lines or that kind of stuff and slow you down, you will eventually get... lose the flank, even though you might have a better supply, like not supply, a better or stronger front line than your opponent. I guess I could put this here. I don't know, man. Dude, if the boys cook me after this video, just let them cook me, okay? I don't know what else to do. Center, probably... It's a deck that feels like it fits into neither role. Okay, always okay, but it's definitely not good. But it does have IV, so let's put it after Airborne, maybe. Airborne? Really? What the hell? Okay, maybe better than Armored Airborne. Okay, there we go. Looks good to me. Let's continue then. The last spec is actually Airborne SF, and if you ask me, Corn, do you even have a deck for that available? I don't see any SF Airborne deck, and that's correct because this deck belongs in completely situational. There you go. It's at the bottom of the board, and I don't think I have definitely seen really good players use it. Okay, the thing I'm about to say is probably gonna be cope, but I've only seen one player use this deck in the top level of Broken Arrow. I'm not saying that this deck would not be suitable for you, definitely, but the way that this deck plays out is that it's played on, how should I put it? Like, you can just try to take control of the cap early in the game with helicopters and really good air, that kind of stuff, and then you just defend it using infantry, thunderbolts, and also helicopters, and then you start bombing your like the middle of the map with your cruise missile planes, F-35s, like more cruise missiles, and other stuff. So this is a deck where you kind of just give up your own front line, or even any methods of pushing into your opponent, and then instead just focus completely on air spamming and defending your own cap, or also helping your allies push their contested point. So this is a very situational deck that I definitely think that if you play this when you play solo, you are trolling. So it's best to use this deck in a 5-stack or something like that, and have a decent amount of coordination with your teammates. Otherwise, this deck will at least not be that useful. And as for the only player that I saw work, make this deck work in like the top tier Broken Arrow gameplay, for some reason we can never hit his planes, but you know that's completely copium. Alright, so that should be it for the first. I'm not gonna spend another 45 minutes on this video, by the way. I'm just gonna reset this really quick, and now all of a sudden, voila! Oh wait, I hope you took screenshots. If not, go back 15 seconds and take a screenshot of it for yourself. For the rest of this video, we're just gonna be making the standard tier list. So I think I will move this bit by bit, but let's start with the ones that I feel safe with. So Stryker SOF, Stryker SOF? No, Stryker Marines is definitely an S tier. This might just be the only deck in that tier, probably. And then we have Stryker SOF, I guess it's an A, because it's good on flanks, but when you play it in center and your opponent knows what they're doing, because you don't really have any tanks or tanky units, then they will eventually outlast you, even though you do have superior, you have really good units still, but you still rely on that air spammy element, and if your planes get shot down, well, you don't get to kill anything, then you kind of lose out. So yeah, it's definitely in the A tier, but on the stronger end. And then we also have Armored SF. I think I don't want to put this in B, man, but it's probably stronger than Stryker SF in the middle cap, but weaker on the flanks, much weaker on the flanks, and still the logistics suck balls. So okay, we'll come back to this later. Armored Marine, actually, isn't this tier list about how easy it is to learn the deck or something? I think it is, but it's okay. I'll just put this guy in D tier. It's not negotiable. Okay, this deck belongs in the D tier. And then we continue. I think Stryker Airborne is actually easy to learn, but it's not as it's in the middle of SF. Man, how do I even? Okay. This I guess we can put this in A tier. Armored Airborne in A tier. I guess it's not. It's okay. I won't get too much heat for doing that. Obviously, putting these in tier list is definitely taking heat is part of the process. There's nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with how I actually think about these tier lists. Marine Airborne is B? Yeah, B. It doesn't have the IVs to help you on the flanks or the center of the map, but you can certainly make it work. I could even put it in C, because the artillery and the planes are definitely good, but you kind of need your teammates to help you with with pinning your opponents down in a certain location, and then you bomb them or artillery them. Oh dear. It's put in BA for now. Oh, this is certainly a good deck. Marine SF. You still don't get IVs, but I guess, do the F-35s make it better? Actually, probably. Right? Comanche? I don't know. Help! I did not prepare myself to make this video today, oh dear. Alright, the next deck would probably be Marine Armored. Okay, well, is it tough? Let me just put Stryker Armored in C, because I rarely, it's not really the popularity of this deck that makes it, it's the fact that I rarely see, every time I play a game and then I think to myself, do I really, this deck never comes to my mind, because I can always do what I want with another deck when, how should I put it? the Stryker armored deck is a deck that it's basically a master of artillery and also armored, but on the other hand, you don't need to be like the master of masters, you know? You can just use any other deck that's decently good enough to deal with your problems at hand, and then you will still be fine. So I think that's why I don't value this deck, even though it is really good at what it does. Because it you know, it doesn't have helicopters at all and other kind of stuff. So yeah, there you go. Stryker Airborne, I guess. Maybe in between. The support tab is pretty good, but you know, you don't have the mid-click. Alright, I'll put that in reserve. Oh. Okay, I'll put a Marine armored above this. This is definitely the one thing. Do I put it over I would definitely put this over this Airborne. It does have IVs, but do I put it over SF? Okay, let's see. God, this is gonna be controversial, but okay, how about we pack these two together, okay? There's no, these two guys are best buddies, you know? Like, one just has more armor, one has a bit more infantry, but I think you can make both of these work. Can you? No. There you go. Okay. Alright. Stryker Airborne would probably be placed higher than Marine Airborne because of the IVs. You don't have the tanks, but that's okay. You still have helicopters and a lot of elements in Airborne to deal with your problems. But probably sucks a bit more on the center of the map, but regardless, having IVs definitely helps. To help you last longer in the front lines. And then this guy, I guess, put him at the end of A, yeah? I'll put him at the end of A. Okay, there you go. Alright, boys. This was definitely a long video. I'm sorry for making it this long, but I hope I explained most of the decks that are currently in the game, except for this one that's in D tier, but you know, we don't have to talk about that one that much. You could technically play every deck in the mirror matchup, and it would be hard to rank them anyway, so... but I hope you find this video helpful, you know? I hope you screenshotted and copied a couple of my decks. If you want, if you do have any further questions, please do come to either the comment section or my Discord server to ask questions, and I will probably reply to them. Once again, a big shout out to Nova and Kiko for helping me fund my gaming addiction, along with my partners from BA Armory for making this fabulous website. I hope everyone else here, I mean every viewer here, has a wonderful vacation or holiday depending on where you live, since it's currently Lunar New Year and I have plans to make another video about that, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe and bye bye.